Director of Compensation and Benefits for the Friedkin Group, and Ted Levy. And again, and where's bald guy Bob? All right. He and I know that together. Bob is a coalition leader out of Arkansas, a PBM purchasing group. Ted's group, Health Delegates, is a rebate aggregator. Again, I got to know these folks because people that are trusted say you got to talk to these folks.
I didn't want to mess it up. Thanks. Well, we got Ted, and Bob's excellent adventure.
Ted Bob. I've changed my name for this.
Okay, good. Three Teds. Find three Teds in a room. I challenge you. We are going to talk about the shell game of rebates. And Chris called me actually late in the game. He probably had somebody better, but he asked me to moderate with these two guys who need no moderation, as you will find out soon. And he said, rebates, that's good, PBM, but there ought to be a spot for rebates. Little did I know that that's what pretty much every panel is going to discuss. But these guys are true experts in the field. I've been through my own PBM RFP process this year, and I thought I learned a lot. And then after talking to Ted and Bob for 10 minutes, we exhausted my knowledge immediately. So I hope that they're able to elevate all of our understanding. We're going to talk about group purchasing operations, organizations, GPOs, also aggregators. We're going to talk about driving to net cost and also revisiting on the contract front, which, as we have learned today, absolutely important. I think Ted will have some good perspective. So, Chris, I think you guys gave these guys a little bit of intro. But in the interest of college football, we have Kansas Jayhawk. Any Jayhawks in the audience? Yay! Yeah, there we go. And we got a Buckeye here, dyed in the wool. So.
I really didn't want that brought up, but I will be wearing a replica national championship ring tomorrow.
Good deal. All right. Well, Ted, we'll start with you, and if you want to give yourself more of an intro, please do talk about your organization. But we're going to lead off with your slide on group purchasing organizations.
So it's great to be here. I've enjoyed all the panels, and so a little bit about myself, Ted Levy. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I'm Vice President of Sales for an organization called Health Delegates. Health Delegates is we manage formularies, and we are a rebate aggregator at kind of our soul. So if you think about that, we are not a PBM. We're PBM agnostic. We have about 5 million lives that we service right now. Many of them are the transparent PBMs that are here today, and some that you might be talking to. And so, rebates obviously have come up, and formularies come up in most of the panels, and so I thought we would really take a bit to understand this culprit, and why is it bad? How can it work for you, given that this is the system right now? So what do we need to know about it? I think it starts with the GPO landscape that we've been talking about, these GPOs. So I thought it'd be helpful to kind of have a diagram, because this is a very good visual tool, because it's very, very complex. So you have 3 GPOs. You have Ascent, MSR, and Zinc. This next top line are the organizations that are either owners or that are independents that access all of the GPO contracts. So if you think about each GPO, what each GPO does is they go out and they negotiate with all the different pharma companies, right? Then it goes to the next kind of level. You've got it on the Ascent side, you've got Express Scripts, Prime, Kroger, PHG. And then from there you have all the downstream. Now I also have a disclaimer before we get going. When you look at the downstream, these things change every day. So it's very fluid underneath that. Top row is pretty constant. Everything else is fairly, so if you see one that's on the Ascent, but they might be getting it from CVS, don't hold that against me. As I said, it's very, very fluid. So it's important to know when you're, as an employer, of where you're at in the food stream, because the lower that you go, the less data that you're going to get, that everybody's talking about is so difficult to get. Well, if you're going upstream 3 different levels, right, that it's more difficult to get that. And so they're taking rebate dollars, they're taking transparency, they're taking data. And there's a real balance between that because as you can see, the big 3, the big 4, the big 5 generally are on that top line. So you have to partner with somebody at PBMs that are here today or that are not, that have a good balance and that can get you the data that you want, that understand, because you're going to hear a lot of transparency, lowest net cost. All these things are buzzwords in our industry, but how does the PBM that you're talking to actually put that in real practical usage every day?
All right, I got a follow-up for you, and I had asked this before. I'm kind of interested. A lot of us are told, you're part of a coalition. We're going to get you all your rebates. We get 100%, but you don't really. And my understanding, part of that is what you're not really getting is you're losing some of it up that food chain, maybe with a GPO, maybe somewhere else.
Yes, everybody's taking a bite out of the apple as it goes downstream, Ted. That's for sure. And I think it was Julia in this last panel that said, the reporting that you get, right, is yes, you can trust your gut, but you have to get, especially with the rebates, you have to get that granular 11-digit NDC claim level that shows drug by drug, NDC by NDC, what was the dollar amount. Part of the problem when we talk about rebates is that most rebate aggregators in this space do brand guarantees. That means that they're lumping things into big channel buckets, and they're saying, putting peanut butter spread, all of your rebates that fit into this retail mail order or a specialty bucket earns an average of amount of dollars. Well, we know that each NDC, each drug has a different rebate amount. So why not, if everybody's goal here is to get the lowest net cost, why not show us what the dollar amount is for each drug? Instead of this blended number that nobody can figure out what it is, reconcile, audit, or anything like that. That's part of the problem that is occurring here.
Thanks for that.
Ted, if I can also add to that, and in our industry there's this word called transparency. Anybody heard of it? I know you have. Our pharmacy solution, we partner with health delegates in Ted's organization. The reason is, I'm in Arkansas, folks. 3 million people live in the entire state of Arkansas. You got 2.4 million in the area of Houston. You're 80% of the entire state. So if I went for my 8,000 to 10,000 employee lives and tried to negotiate rebates, I might get a penny. By being a part of an organization like Ted's, it gives us and our employer members the benefit of being big and getting the advantage to it, because size does matter.
Well, we're going to go ahead and switch gears, so thanks for jumping in, Bob. We're going to go to our next question, which is what you want to talk about, which is driving to lowest net cost, which is kind of moving away, I guess, from the rebate area as much as you can.
Not necessarily. Or what did Lee Corso say? Not so fast, my friend. Since we're on a football theme here. Let me just tell you a little bit about the Employers Advanced Cooperative on Healthcare, which we call EACH because it's a lot faster and a lot easier to say. We've been around almost 30 years. We are an employer-led coalition, meaning our board is made up of our employer members. Our board makes decisions. We make recommendations as the organization that works with them to manage the coalition, but our organization cannot make any decisions without presenting it to our board of employers, and they either approve or deny. I think we're working, fortunately, at 100% approval. We've been around almost 30 years. We serve primarily the West Arkansas market, which is Fort Smith, Arkansas, and the area there. We're about an hour and a half south of the sexy part of Arkansas, which is Northwest Arkansas. There's a little company up there called Walmart, so you may have heard of them. So our employer members are primarily in West Arkansas, although we do have membership representation of our programs in 8 states. We are a group purchasing model, meaning what's important to our employer members is providing the best possible benefits to best and highest quality of health care for their work families at the lowest possible cost. So the programs that we have, our pharmacy program that we started in 2011, our full replacement self-funded programs for our market, because most of the employers are fully insured with Blue Cross Blue Shield, under 500 employee lives, and quite frankly, under 300 employee lives. Their only option to really take advantage of programs like this are to be self-funded. And because we're not an attractive state for other competition to come in, we've created self-funded solutions for that small to mid-sized employer. I heard the person talk about that they can implement that includes a pharmacy solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add too that, Ted, to your comment of, well, rebates are really not, lowering net costs. When rebates are used properly, they absolutely can lower net cost. However, that means that everything has to sync up. So what I mean by that is that rebates can't be your only lever to lower net cost. Bob and his organization, as other people here, do wonderful jobs of looking for alternative programs to help reduce cost. So rebates are one of, but not the only by any means. However, when you get into contracts that have minimum brand guarantees, that's going to impact your formulary choices because they have to hit that number. So that's why you might have on a formulary higher cost drugs opposed to lower net cost drugs, because they've got to hit that number.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, absolutely.
And so, Bob, I know that you're not under that rule, or that guide.
No.
So you can say, hey, is international? Is it 340B? Is it clinical? Is it PA? Is it any type whatever? But a lot of PBMs that are hamstrung by that brand guarantee have to keep pushing, especially the big three and the big four and the big five, but many others too, because they go upstream on that chart that I showed, and they're kind of still. If they have a guarantee upstream, there might be some trickle-down effect that's going to impact you downstream. So good to know, again, where you fall in that food chain.
I will add to that, Ted. Our pharmacy program started by employers, and our leader at the time, back in 2011, honestly, they were so far ahead of the curve, and what people are talking about now, they were behind it. Carol Hendricks, which I'm sure you knew, she was our executive director. I take no credit for the results of the program that we have for our employers. They built it. They did it the right way. Their focus was addressing the misalignment of incentives. Their focus was breaking apart the PBM world as they knew it, meaning the network, the claims processing, the clinical management, all of that, the rebates, and an independent, transparent PBM, which we had for a few years, and we realized they weren't really transparent like we're talking about today. So that thought leadership was started, believe it or not, in West Arkansas by a lady who was very passionate, very knowledgeable, and had a huge impact on employers. We're just trying to continue that legacy and tradition, and as we can, make the program better where there is opportunities. But honestly and truly, our employer members, they care about two things. Take care of the patient, three, patient, quality, and lowest possible cost. We have no problem where it makes sense pursuing rebates. But we're not going to pursue rebates when there is an equally effective prescription option for that patient that costs a lot less. That's the motivation of our employers.
Sounds like the way to do it, unless you want to work with Renzo, because that's the way he does it too. Yeah.
Renzo lives in a world that we don't play in.
Well, I think we'll move on to the contract part of the discussion, Ted, and kind of let you kind of come into some of these areas, or maybe there's some gotchas, but certainly areas where we as plan sponsors need to be focused and educated.
Right. So when looking at a PBM, you're looking at a full-scale health model, right? So, but rebates and formulary play a very big piece into that. So here's just a couple of things that when you're focusing on the rebate, to kind of keep top of mind. So brand, and I broke this down in two different buckets. One is definitions. So help delegates, just for example, we don't believe in any definitions or any exclusions or anything like that. In my mind, that's really what a pass-through model is, not what people call, well, we're going to pass through with anything that doesn't meet our definitions, which are a lot of times ambiguous or are exclusions that are easy manipulated. For us, it's GPO gets paid by the manufacturer, help delegates get paid by the GPO, we pay our clients, we document everything. That's ultimately the goal that you can shoot for. I don't know if you're going to get there or not, but in the meantime, here are a few things just to kind of keep. A brand claim. There is a gazillion different definitions of what a brand claim is. Seems pretty straightforward. It's not. Same thing with qualified claim. Those are something that some of the folks here that are on these panels or walking around here, you should ask them as consultants. You know, how do you go through all of these definitions? And the exclusions are the same too. We don't have any exclusions in our contracts with our downstream PBMs or health plans or large employers, but many PBMs have all kinds of different exclusions and caveats. Again, it gives them the freedom to meet those brand guarantees that are in that contract. Biosimilars, 340B limited distribution drugs are all ones that I call very fuzzy because those are not excluded like vaccines you're not going to get a rebate on, right? These drugs are, these categories are three examples of where you may get a rebate, meaning the manufacturer might pay the GPO or you might not. The question you have to ask your PBM and upstream, their aggregator is, how do I know what is going to be, that the GPO is going to get paid on? How do I know that's going to flow into my employer? Because if the GPO is getting paid by the manufacturer, it can't get trapped in that food chain bubble that we saw, all the layers and stuff like that. Somebody's going to grab it. So are they passing down everything? That's number one. And then this is a very, very volatile market right now. So you have biosimilars that came last year. You have now these MFP drugs. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the MFP drugs that are hitting right now. And what that means is that that the market is changing very, very rapidly. And in your contracts with PBMs, a lot of PBMs, not all, but many PBMs, let's say, there's wiggle room in there. There's clauses of reservation of rights. There's rebate credit language. There's market events that, again, helps PBMs when they put that RFP out there and you sign that contract and you're expecting a number, well, how do they get to that number? And ultimately, you need to know all these things of how it's going to impact. There are blockbuster drugs that are hitting this MFP, which is the maximum fair price. This year you have Januvia, I'm not a pharmacist, so I'm drawing a blank right now. Next year, yeah, 2027, right? All the GLP-1s, it's going to turn it upside down. So if you have, say you're sitting on a 2 or 3 year contract, and somebody's projecting into the future, and it's based on these minimum guarantees, well, they're not going to hit those numbers. So you need to be asking, what happens when these drugs come? Are you going to be using the expensive biosimilars? Are you going to be using the low WAC biosimilars? Are you accounting for the GLPs and these big drugs that are coming in your guarantees? Because you can't, because those rebates are going to be severely discounted or even go away. So you have to plan for those things because you don't want to say, well, wait a minute, I was expecting X and I only got Y. It goes back to the communication, the trust, and specifically contract language.
Good. Thanks, Ted. Well, I got a couple more questions here, but I thought maybe we could just go ahead and open it up to the audience, see if anybody's got any questions.
Okay, in 2019, this chart didn't exist.
Oh.
And all of these individual PBMs had their own rebate departments where they
Yep.
contracted and
Yep.
they submitted and yada, yada.
Yep.
If the PBM industry wasn't all in collusion with each other to allow this to happen, how did this happen? How did the GPOs?
Yeah, well, listen, I think it's a valid point. We used to have direct contracts, right? And at a certain point, I think it was a scale issue, to be honest with you, Susan, is that if you look on who's that top line, Express Scripts, Prime, Kroger, Optum, CVS, I mean, that is a whole heck of a lot of lives right there. And so...
I would argue that someone like Capital RX, who, reportedly transparent PBM, why did they agree to this? Why did the PBMs agree to this?
I think largely it's pharma that are you going to, when you contract directly with pharma, how successful are entities below, regardless of size, or are the manufacturers going to play ball with anybody below that on a wide spread? Are they going to contract, or are they going to contract or say, sorry, we just work with primarily these three GPOs and they have the best price? Ultimately, that's kind of what took place, and it was a lot of people suspect that was another way for the big five to make more money and tax. I mean, we all understand it. I think the good news though is that we've seen direct contracting open up more and more now. There's organizations that can contract directly with pharma to augment the GPO relationships. I don't know if anybody will get there that they have they can do all of the drugs direct contracting, but it is getting better.
Yeah, Renzo, did you want to add something there?
Yes, it was mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you can comment on the rebate credits on the biosimilars and what's going on there, because that's theft.
It absolutely is, right. So again, what Renzo's alluding to is that you have, let's just use Humira, because that was kind of the first big one, right? You got I don't know, I think it was call it a $10,000 drug net rebates. Right? Well, now these biosimilars came 2 years ago, and you have a whole host of different ones. So now you have a mid whack instead of now $10,000, an Express Scripts or ESI or Optum, the big three. And again, I'm painting with generalities here, so if anybody's from those organizations, don't throw anything at me. But they'll go and they'll say, hey, great news, guys. All your Humira scripts, they used to cost you $10,000. Well, now we've got this great biosimilar, and it's only going to cost you $6,000. Well, and this is kind of a loaded question. What they're really not telling you is they're choosing for their formulary to hit those brand guarantees. They're charging you $6,000, but really an organization that's focused on lowest net costs and has the formulary, they could get that same type of a biosimilar, and it would only cost you $1,000. So they're still making that money in the spread. And so what the PBMs have done on the rebate credit language now is they've said, hey, we were charging you and we built these brand guarantees at $10,000, but right now your acquisition cost, because we've done such a great job, we're only going to charge you $2,000, but there's an $8,000 savings there. Well, instead of just giving them that savings of $8,000 and saying, great, help with your premiums, help with your out-of-pockets, they're saying, no, we're not going to do that. It's not really a credit, it's going to be a clawback. So at the end of the year or whenever they do it, there's going to be some type of reconciliation. And I've seen the different mathematical things. That's one example of how they do it. Some are based on WAC differences and things like that. But ultimately, if you see the word rebate credit in your contract, it is not a credit like, oh yeah, I get a credit. It is a clawback. Does that help answer your question? And we're going to see this over and over and over as more biosimilars come, because they're all coming in there, and you should absolutely, if you're saying you're going to a lowest net cost formulary, you should absolutely go to the biosimilars, and you should know what are the mid WAC, what are the high WAC, and what are the low WAC biosimilars, And are there any rebates on those? Because there are rebates on some of these biosimilars. You might not just be getting any. Again, one of those PBMs or one of those layers is just keeping that, and they're not passing it through. That's why transparency, pass-through, they're all very overused in our industry, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wanted to address Susan's great question about the timing and the GPO or I think it's two things in my opinion, and Ted, I'd like your thoughts on it, is number one, it has to do with the debate that Sean was talking about with transparency, and by them separating by a legal entity, they don't have to disclose as much of the revenue, because the transparency conversation is always around PBM transparency, and now they form these GPOs, and they're not PBMs. So they don't have to disclose the revenue that they're making through the GPOs.
Yes.
The second thing is...
Bonafide services, right? That's why they lump them in there. Bonafide services that they're not legally required to share.
I think the second thing is, and I hate to sound like I'm beating on this issue constantly, but it's the RFP process. So I used to be at Navitas, and I led a division of Navitas, and we had to respond to PBM RFPs in order to be competitive. We had to go into the prime agreement to be able to be competitive. So if we're going to ask for rebate guarantees, unfortunately, some of the PBMs that are trying to do the right things are going to not do the right things at the end.
Absolutely. It's very challenging, especially when you're trying to buck the system and go to lowest net cost and ask, tell me more about your formulary. I want to see therapeutic financial modeling. What are my options? What's my flexibility? It's just very hard to find these things, unfortunately.
Chris, well, actually, I want to be fair to Josh. Capital RX came up. I don't know if we have time for it. I don't know if you still had a question or a comment since you guys came up. No, it's okay. I just saw Josh raising his hand. He might have had a thought. That's all. Yeah.
You put me on the spot, Susan. I got to respond. So I'm Josh Golden with Capital RX. I think what I will essentially do is validate what was said about the willingness and the intent of pharma to do direct contracting, either with employers, with health plans, or with mid-sized PBMs like ourselves. I can speak from our journey. We did not just blindly sign up for a large GPO. We went through a very extensive market search process, talked directly to pharma, talked in very real terms about what those economics look like. And I can tell you this, pharma seems very, very interested in direct contracting, and they will sing that song. And I think that in spirit, they really do believe that that's better than having to deal with these three massive market demons, right? But when the economics started to play out, the way it works is very simple. This is a math equation, right? You set up your formulary the way you want, and then you look at the rebate equation. And it is, what is the retention of the GPO arrangement? And we know that through the contract we now have. We know exactly what that retention is. And how much does pharma want to claw back in value when they go direct? Because that's really what they're saying. When they get excited about going direct, what they're saying is, we think we can pay you less than what we're currently having to shell out to the big three GPOs. We think going direct will be net more profitable for us. And that math equation became readily apparent, and we saw the clear answer, at least for now. But I think that changes. To your point, the landscape's changing. We're getting bigger. These other PBMs are getting bigger. I think these sands could shift over time.
Yeah, well said.
Christine beat me to the punch, which doesn't surprise me. She usually does. But I was just going to say, the evaluation process is what drove a lot of this. And if you look at the bigger houses and how they evaluate PBM and show rebates and discounts as the holy grail, a middle market PBM had to show bigger numbers in order to compete in the market, to win those bigger bids because of how they were being evaluated, because they didn't get consideration for low net cost or Renzo's PA clinical criteria.
Yep.
A lot of our members have been transitioning to alternative PBMs, and we'll point this out. We've heard it ad nauseum. You got to get the RFP and the contracts right. to begin with, and that should be the priority. The rest should fall into place. So I've got a whole bunch of more questions, but we don't have time to ask them, but these folks will be around. Let's give them a hand, and we'll get our next panel up here.